The war had been going on for 30 years. Commander Zephys looked out from the bridge of his massive ship called Star's Edge. His crystal body glowed with worry as he watched his fleet get destroyed by the enemy. The Voidborn were winning again. Zephys belonged to a race called the Althari. They were made of living crystal and could create powerful energy shields. But even their best technology was not enough. The Voidborn ships looked like moving shadows that could disappear and reappear anywhere they wanted. The Galactic Federation had 12 different alien races fighting together. There were the bug-like Kithara who could make living weapons. The Luminari were beings made of pure light who could walk through walls. The fish-like Pelagics could breathe in space. All of them were losing this war. The Voidborn were not like normal aliens. They were made of dark matter and fed on entire star systems. Their ships were alive and hungry. They had been eating planets for 3 decades and growing stronger with each meal. Today's battle was at the Kepler Junction. This was an important place where 5 different star systems connected. If the Federation lost here, the Voidborn would control all the trade routes. Millions of planets would be cut off from help. The Voidborn had brought their newest weapon today. They called it the Entropy Cannon. When it fired, Federation ships aged 1,000 years in seconds. Metal turned to rust. Energy shields collapsed. Entire crews died of old age in moments. "Sir, we are losing ships fast," said his second-in-command. The insect officer's voice buzzed with fear. "The entropy cannons are too powerful. Our shields cannot stop them." Zephys watched another Federation cruiser turn to dust. Inside that ship were 300 brave souls who had families waiting for them. Now they were gone. Just like thousands of others who had died in this endless war. "All ships retreat," Zephys ordered. It hurt him to say those words. But staying meant everyone would die. "Fall back to the secondary line." The Federation fleet turned and ran. The Voidborn ships followed like hungry wolves. Their dark forms moved through space without making any sound. They were beautiful and terrible at the same time. But then something strange happened. The sensors picked up new ships approaching the battlefield. 12 vessels that looked nothing like Federation technology or Voidborn shadows. These ships were made of simple metal and had crude designs. They looked primitive and weak. "What are those?" asked the bug officer. Zephys studied the readings. The ships used nuclear fusion for power. That was ancient technology. The Federation had not used fusion in 1,000 years. These vessels also had thick armor instead of energy shields. Who still built ships like that? The strange ships were moving toward the Voidborn fleet at top speed. This made no sense. Any sane captain would run away from the shadow ships. But these unknown vessels were charging straight into battle. "They are sending a message," said the communications officer. "But it is on an old radio frequency, very primitive." "Put it through," Zephys ordered. A rough voice filled the bridge. The universal translator worked slowly to decode the alien language. Finally, words came through that Zephys could understand. "This is Admiral Jake Morrison of the United Earth Navy. We are here to help." Earth? Zephys had never heard of this planet. The star charts showed no major civilization called Earth. Who were these people? And why were they attacking the Voidborn with such old technology? The unknown ships reached the enemy formation. Zephys expected them to be destroyed instantly. The Voidborn had been winning every battle for 30 years. Nothing could stand against their entropy weapons and phase-shifting abilities. But something impossible happened. The Earth ships opened fire with weapons that should not work. They shot metal slugs instead of energy beams. They launched missiles with explosive warheads. Some even used chemical rockets that left trails of fire. The Voidborn ships tried to phase out of normal space to avoid the attacks. This trick had always worked before. Energy weapons could not hit targets that were not fully in this dimension. But the metal slugs and explosions existed in normal spacetime. They hit the shadow ships and caused real damage. One of the Earth ships rammed directly into a Voidborn cruiser. The primitive vessel exploded in a ball of nuclear fire. Both ships were destroyed, but the Voidborn had lost one of their entropy cannons. "Impossible," whispered the bug officer. "How are they hurting the Voidborn?" Zephys did not know. In 30 years of war, no one had found a way to damage the shadow ships reliably. But these Earth vessels were tearing through the enemy formation, like it was made of paper. The Voidborn began to retreat. Zephys could not believe what he was seeing. The most feared enemy in the galaxy was running away from 12 primitive ships. The shadow vessels melted back into dark space and disappeared. The battle was over. The Federation had been saved by complete strangers who used weapons that seemed to come from ancient history. But who were these humans, and where had they come from? Admiral Morrison's voice came through the radio again. "Federation ships, this is the Earth fleet, we need to talk." The meeting happened on a Federation hospital ship 3 hours after the battle. Commander Zephys had never been this nervous before. He was about to meet the strangers who had just saved his entire fleet from destruction. Admiral Jake Morrison was not what Zephys expected. The human was shorter than most Federation races and had no natural weapons or armor. His skin was soft and his body looked fragile, but his eyes were hard like steel and his voice carried the weight of command. "Thank you for agreeing to this meeting," Morrison said through the translator. He sat across from Zephys at a simple metal table. "I know this must be confusing for you." Beside Morrison sat Lieutenant Commander Lisa Park, a smaller human with quick eyes that missed nothing. She kept watching the exits and checking her primitive computer device. Captain Rick Santos, their engineer, looked tired but alert. Dr. Elena Rodriguez was also there. She was the human expert on alien life and had been studying the Federation races for hours. Her excitement was clear on her face as she looked at beings she had only seen in old legends. "Confusing is not the right word," Zephys replied. His crystal body flickered with colors that showed stress. "Your ships should not have been able to damage the Voidborn. We have been fighting them for 30 years and barely scratched their hulls." Morrison nodded slowly. "That is because you have been fighting them wrong. Energy weapons and shields work differently than physical attacks. The Voidborn can phase out of this dimension to avoid energy, but they cannot avoid things that exist in normal space." High Arbiter Keth of the Nephilari floated nearby. His gas-based body swirled with patterns of confusion. "But your technology is so primitive. How did you know this would work?" Dr. Rodriguez leaned forward. "We have been watching this war for 20 years. Our long-range sensors picked up the battles. We studied your tactics and the Voidborn abilities. Then we built weapons specifically to counter their advantages." Warsinger Vex of the Drakmori clicked her claws on the table. Her reptilian face showed doubt. "You watched us die for 20 years and did nothing?" Morrison's face became grim. "We were not ready. 12 ships is all we have. Our entire space fleet fits in this room. We had to wait until we could make a real difference." The truth was hard to accept. These humans had built a tiny fleet and somehow succeeded where the entire Federation had failed. But there were still many questions. "Where is your homeworld?" asked Zephys. "Earth is not in any of our star charts." "That is because we are very far away," Park said. "Our solar system is on the edge of the galaxy. Most races consider it empty space not worth exploring." Santos spoke up for the first time. "We are not part of your trade networks or political systems. Until now, we have been completely isolated." Dr. Rodriguez was studying readings on her device. "We are fascinated by your species. Some of you appear in our oldest legends and stories. The Althari look like crystal beings from our mythology. The Luminari match descriptions of light spirits. It is almost like our ancestors met you before." This made Zephys think. There were old stories in Althari history about a warrior race from the edge of space. But those tales were 50,000 years old. They spoke of fierce fighters who used strange weapons and never gave up. Most scholars thought they were just myths. "Admiral Morrison," Zephys said carefully, "how long have your people been spacefaring?" "Officially? About 300 years. But we have only had ships that could travel between stars for 50 years. This is our first time meeting other intelligent life." That did not match the ancient stories. But there was something about these humans that felt familiar. The way Morrison held himself reminded Zephys of old statues in Althari museums. Warriors from the forgotten time. Suddenly, alarms began ringing throughout the hospital ship. A communications officer ran into the room with urgent news. "Sir, we are receiving distress calls from the Rigel system. A massive void-born fleet is attacking the colonies there. They have at least 50 motherships." Morrison stood up immediately. "How long until they reach the core Federation worlds?" 2 days at most," the officer replied. "Maybe less if they use their dimensional shortcuts." Park was already calculating on her computer. "Admiral, if we leave now, we can reach Rigel in 18 hours, but 12 ships against 50 motherships. We have to try," Morrison said. "These people helped us when we needed information. Now they need our help." Santos shook his head. "Jake, that is suicide. We barely survived one battle against a small void-born force. 50 motherships will destroy us in minutes." Dr. Rodriguez looked at her readings again. "Wait. I am seeing something strange in the data from our battle. The void-born were not just retreating. They were afraid." "Afraid?" Vex laughed. "The void-born do not feel fear. They are entropy given form. They only know hunger and destruction." "No, she is right," Morrison said slowly. "I saw it too. When our weapons started hitting them, they pulled back faster than they needed to. Almost like they recognized our attack pattern." Dr. Rodriguez nodded. "Admiral, what if these are not the first humans the Voidborn have fought? What if there is history here we do not understand?" The room fell silent. Everyone was thinking about the implications. If humans had fought the Voidborn before, where were the records? Where were the other human colonies? And why did only Earth remain? Morrison made his decision. "Commander Zephys, we are going to Rigel to help with the defense. But first I need to know everything your people remember about ancient warrior races. Every story, every legend, every piece of old technology you can find." Zephys felt his crystal body pulse with something between hope and fear. "Admiral, if you are who I think you might be, then this war is about to change completely. But the truth may be more terrible than any of us are ready to face." Outside the hospital ship, space seemed darker than usual. In the distance, sensors detected movement. The Voidborn were gathering their forces for something big. And deep in the oldest parts of space, ancient systems that had slept for millennia were beginning to wake up. The journey to Rigel took 18 hours, but it felt like days. Admiral Morrison stood on the bridge of the UEN Defiance, watching the star charts with growing worry. Intelligence reports showed the Voidborn fleet was bigger than anything seen. Before Dr. Alex Thompson sat at his research station, reading through files the Federation had shared. As the fleet's historian, he was trying to make sense of the ancient records. What he found made his hands shake. "Admiral, you need to see this," Thompson said. His voice was quiet but urgent. Morrison walked over to look at the data. The screens showed images from 50,000 years ago. Ancient ruins, old weapons, and star maps from a forgotten time. But what caught his attention were the statues. The statues looked human. "This is from an Althari archaeological site," Thompson explained. "They found these ruins on 12 different worlds. The statues all show the same thing. Tall bipedal figures in armor, holding weapons that fire solid projectiles. The Althari called them the Terran hegemony." Lieutenant Commander Park looked up from her tactical station. "Terran means Earth, but that would mean humans ruled part of the galaxy 50,000 years ago. That is impossible." Captain Santos joined them at the research station. "Maybe not impossible, just forgotten." "Alex, what else do the records say?" Thompson scrolled through more files. The Terran hegemony fought alongside the Federation races, against something called the First Voidborn War. They were known for using brutal tactics and weapons that violated several galactic treaties. But they were also the only ones who could consistently beat the Voidborn in battle. Morrison felt cold. What happened to them? That is the strange part. According to these records, the Terran hegemony simply vanished. One day they were winning the war. The next day all their ships were gone. The Federation assumed they had been destroyed, but no wreckage was ever found. Dr. Rodriguez was listening from her station. What if they were not destroyed? What if They chose to disappear. Before anyone could answer, alarms rang through the ship. They had reached the Rigel system, and what they saw made everyone stop talking. The Voidborn fleet was enormous. 50 motherships hung in space like dark clouds, each one the size of a small moon. Around them swarmed thousands of smaller vessels. They were attacking the Federation defense stations with entropy weapons that turned metal to dust. Commander Zephys was leading the Federation defense from his flagship, but his force of 30 ships looked tiny compared to the Voidborn armada. Several Federation vessels were already destroyed, their crews aged to death in seconds. "This is Admiral Morrison to Commander Zephys," Morrison called on the radio. "We are here to help." "Admiral, you must retreat," Zephys replied. His voice was full of pain. "This force is too large. We cannot win." Morrison looked at his small fleet of 12 ships. Santos was right. This was suicide. But something deep inside him refused to run away. It felt like betraying something important. "All ships, attack formation," Morrison ordered. "Target the motherships with nuclear missiles. Use ramming speed if necessary." Park stared at him. "Admiral, that is insane. We will all die." "Maybe," Morrison said, "but we are going to make them pay for every ship they destroy." The human fleet charged toward the Voidborn formation. Their primitive weapons opened fire, sending streams of metal slugs and nuclear warheads into the enemy ranks. Several Voidborn cruisers exploded as the physical attacks tore through their phase-shifted hulls. But there were too many enemy ships. For every Voidborn vessel destroyed, 10 more took its place. The human fleet was being overwhelmed. Then something incredible happened. Captain Jake Martinez was commanding the destroyer UEN Wolverine when his ship took critical damage. His engines were failing and his weapons were nearly empty. But instead of retreating, he made a desperate choice. "All hands, abandon ship," Martinez ordered. "I am taking us into the enemy mothership." The Wolverine accelerated toward the largest, Voidborn vessel. Martinez had activated something called the Phoenix Drive, an experimental engine that his engineers had been working on for years. As the destroyer hit the mothership, both ships disappeared in a ball of pure energy. The explosion tore a hole in space itself. 12 Voidborn cruisers were sucked into the dimensional rift and destroyed. The mothership split in half and began falling apart. Morrison felt something change inside him as he watched Martinez's sacrifice. Memories that did not belong to him flashed through his mind. Ancient battles, forgotten weapons, and the faces of warriors who had fought and died 50,000 years ago. "Admiral," Thompson called out, "I am reading massive energy signatures from the outer system. Something big is coming." On the sensors, new contacts appeared, ships that looked like nothing in the current human fleet. They were enormous, made from materials that seemed to bend light around them. And they were heading straight for the battle. The Federation crews watched in amazement as 12 ancient vessels entered the fight. These ships used weapons that fired beams of pure destruction. They moved through space like they were dancing, avoiding every Voidborn attack while destroying enemy ships with single shots. "Those are Terran hegemony vessels," Thompson whispered. "But how are they still operational after 50,000 years?" The answer came from an unexpected source. A new voice spoke on the radio, clear and strong despite the age of the transmission equipment. "This is Captain Adam Cross of the hegemony ship Eternal Watch. All human vessels, fall back to defensive positions. We will handle the Voidborn." Morrison felt his blood turn to ice. The voice was human, but it carried an authority that made him want to obey without question. More importantly, it sounded exactly like the descriptions of Voidborn psychic transmissions. Dr. Rodriguez was scanning the ancient ships with her instruments. "Admiral, those vessels are not entirely in our dimension. They are phase-shifting just like the Voidborn, and I am reading organic components mixed with the technology." The truth hit Morrison like a physical blow. The ancient human ships were not just fighting the Voidborn. They had become like them. Somehow, the Terran hegemony had transformed themselves into the very enemy they were fighting. But that raised a terrible question. If the ancient humans had become like the Voidborn, then what were the shadow ships that had been attacking the Federation for 30 years? As if reading his thoughts, Captain Cross spoke again. Admiral Morrison, you and your people need to return to Earth immediately. The Voidborn have discovered your homeworld, and they are bringing everything they have to destroy it. The battle at Regal was won, but Morrison realized it had been a distraction. While the Federation fought here, the real Voidborn fleet was heading for Earth. Humanity's homeworld was about to face the full fury of an enemy that had been preparing for this moment for 50,000 years. The trip back to Earth took 36 hours at maximum speed. Admiral Morrison had never felt so helpless in his life. His small fleet was racing to save their homeworld, but they had no idea what they would find when they arrived. Captain Ben Walker commanded the science ship UN Discovery. His job was to scan ahead and report what the sensors found. What he saw made him call Morrison immediately. Admiral, you need to look at these readings. The entire solar system is different. Morrison joined Walker on the Discovery's bridge. The sensor displays showed their home system, but it looked nothing like the place they had left weeks ago. New structures appeared everywhere. Massive installations on Mars, Jupiter's moons, and the asteroid belt. Those were not there when we left, Lieutenant Colonel Amy Carter said. She commanded the human Marines and had grown up on Mars. I would have noticed buildings the size of cities on my home planet. Dr. Carlos Rivera, the fleet's chief physicist, was studying the energy readings. Admiral, these installations are generating power signatures that should be impossible. They are using technology we do not have. As they got closer to Earth, more impossible things became visible. The moon looked different. What had once been a simple rock was now clearly artificial. Metal structures covered its surface, and massive weapons pointed toward space. This is insane, Walker muttered. The moon is not a moon. It is a weapons platform. Dr. Rodriguez was scanning everything with her instruments. The energy patterns match what we saw from the hegemony ships at Rigel. These installations are 50,000 years old, but they are activating now. Something is waking them up. Morrison felt pieces of a puzzle clicking together in his mind. Our presence in space. As humanity moves beyond Earth, the old systems recognize us and start working again. Before anyone could respond, they received a transmission from Earth. It was Admiral Patricia Hayes, commander of Earth's orbital defense platforms. Jake, thank God you are back. We have been trying to reach you for hours. The system is going crazy. Ancient ships are coming out of hidden bases in the asteroid belt, and we have visitors. Visitors? Morrison asked. The Federation sent a diplomatic mission. They arrived 2 hours ago, and they are pretty shocked by what they found. Commander, Zephys is here, along with some of their best scientists. They want to talk to you immediately. The human fleet docked at the newly revealed space station orbiting Earth. Morrison could not believe what he was seeing. The station was enormous, bigger than anything humanity had ever built. But it was clearly human in design. Commander Zephys met them at the airlock. His crystal body was flickering with colors Morrison had learned meant confusion and fear. Admiral Morrison, we need to discuss what we have discovered. Your planet is not what it appears to be. They met in a conference room that had been built 50,000 years ago, but looked like it was constructed yesterday. Ancient technology kept everything in perfect condition. Ambassador Kira of the Pelagics was there, along with General Thane of the Cybernetic Nexus Collective. Admiral, Kira said, we have been studying your solar system for the past day. Every planet, every moon, every large asteroid has hidden installations. This entire system is a fortress designed to fight a war that ended before our civilizations were born. General Thane activated a holographic display. The defensive systems are beyond anything in the known galaxy. The weapons we have detected could destroy entire fleets without effort. But the most disturbing discovery is this. The hologram showed Earth's surface, but instead of continents and oceans, it displayed a vast network of underground facilities, cities, factories, and weapon stores that stretch deep into the planet's core. Your homeworld is hollow, Thane explained. The surface is just a shell. Underneath is a military installation that could house 1 billion soldiers and enough weapons to conquer the galaxy. Morrison felt sick. You are saying Earth is not really our planet. It is a military base. More than that, Zephys said gently. We think Earth is a prison. Dr. Thompson had been quiet during the briefing, but now he spoke up. I have been reading through the hegemony archives we recovered. There are references to something called the Great Forgetting. The Terran hegemony did not just disappear. They chose to forget who they were. He activated his own display, showing ancient documents covered in symbols that looked almost human, but not quite. According to these records, the hegemony discovered something during their war with the Voidborn. Something so terrible that they decided to erase their own memories and start over as primitive people. Earth was designed to be a place where humanity could live simple lives and never remember what they had been. Rivera was studying the technical specifications. But if that is true, what triggered the awakening? Why are the systems activating now? The answer came from an unexpected source. Captain Rachel Stone had been exploring the ancient installations with a team of engineers. Her voice came over the communication system, filled with excitement and terror. Admiral, you need to get down here right away. We found the control center for the whole system, and it is still occupied. Morrison and the others took a shuttle to the moon's surface. The ancient base was vast beyond imagination. Corridors stretched for miles, filled with technology that seemed like magic. At the center was a chamber that housed the most advanced computer system any of them had ever seen. Standing in front of the computer was a figure in ancient armor. It turned as they approached, and Morrison saw a face that was definitely human but somehow wrong. The eyes were too bright, and the skin had a strange metallic sheen. Admiral Morrison, the figure said in a voice that echoed strangely. I am Guardian Prime Adam Cross. I have been waiting 50,000 years for humanity to return to space. Morrison recognized the name. You are the captain we heard at Rigel, but you are supposed to be with the hegemony fleet. Adam Cross smiled, but it was not a happy expression. I am, and I am also here. The transformation process allows us to exist in multiple places at once. It is one of the gifts we received when we became like our enemies. Dr. Rodriguez stepped forward. What transformation? What happened to the Terran hegemony? We became what we had to become to win the war, Cross explained. Rossi. The Voidborn were creatures of pure entropy. To fight them effectively, we had to become entropy ourselves. We gave up our humanity and became living weapons. The holographic displays around them showed the true scope of the ancient war. Battles that consumed entire star systems. Weapons that could rewrite the laws of physics. And in the center of it all, humans who had transformed themselves into monsters to protect the galaxy. But we won, Morrison said. The Voidborn were defeated. Cross shook his head. No, Admiral, we became them. The creatures you have been fighting for 30 years are not invaders from another galaxy. They are us. The Terran hegemony transformed into the Voidborn to fight an even greater threat. And now that threat is returning. Alarms began sounding throughout the base. Ancient sensors had detected something approaching the solar system. Something vast and hungry that made the Voidborn. Fleets look like toys. The outer dark is coming, Cross said quietly. Entities from beyond the universe that seek to unravel reality itself. We held them back for 50,000 years, but they have found us again. And this time, we cannot run away. Morrison looked around at his people, at the Federation representatives, and at the ancient guardian who had once been human. Then we fight, all of us together. Cross studied him for a long moment. Admiral, do you understand what that means? To fight the outer dark, humanity will have to remember what we really are, and that knowledge will change your people forever. Outside, space began to darken as something impossible approached Earth. The final battle was about to begin, and humanity would have to choose between remaining innocent and becoming the warriors they had once been. The enemy arrived 3 hours later. Admiral Morrison watched from the bridge of the ancient flagship Eternal Vigil as space itself began to tear apart. The ships that emerged were not made of matter. They were holes in reality that hurt to look at directly. Captain Jennifer Murphy stood beside him, commanding the tactical systems of the hegemony vessel. The technology was so advanced it responded to their thoughts, but using it felt wrong, like wearing clothes that belonged to a dead person. "Admiral, we count 50 entities," Murphy reported. "Each one is the size of a small planet, and they are not alone." Behind the reality-tearing ships came the Voidborn fleet. But these were not the shadow vessels they had fought before. These Voidborn looked different, more human. Morrison realized he was seeing what the Terran hegemony had become 50,000 years ago. Guardian Prime Adam Cross materialized on the bridge. His ability to exist in multiple places at once was disturbing to watch. "Admiral, the Outer Dark has brought our transformed brothers and sisters. They hope to use former humans to destroy current humans." Colonel Steve Peterson commanded the combined human and Federation ground forces from the surface of Mars. His voice came through the communication system as ancient defense platforms rose from the red planet's crust. "Admiral, the Martian weapons are online. We have enough firepower to crack moons, but I do not think it will be enough." Morrison looked at the tactical display. The enemy force was beyond anything the galaxy had ever seen. Even with all the ancient hegemony technology, they were outnumbered 1,000 to 1. Dr. Thompson had been studying the hegemony archives for hours. "Admiral, I found something. There is a weapon hidden in Earth's core called the Genesis engine. It can rewrite the fundamental laws of physics in a local area, but using it requires someone to merge with the system permanently." Captain Daniel Foster was the youngest ship commander in the fleet. He had been quiet during most of the briefing, but now he spoke up. "What does that mean exactly?" Cross answered. "It means whoever operates the Genesis engine will lose their humanity forever. They will become part of the machine, guiding its reality-altering effects, but never again being fully human." The battle began when the Outer Dark entities reached the edge of the solar system. They did not use weapons in any normal sense. Instead, they simply existed, and their existence made nearby space stop working properly. Federation ships that got too close aged backwards and forwards at random. Some disappeared entirely. Captain Lisa Chang led a squadron of reactivated hegemony fighters against the Voidborn fleet. Her pilots discovered something important during the dogfights. Human unpredictability confused the entropy-based intelligence of their transformed cousins. "Admiral, the Voidborn expect logical responses," Chang reported as her fighter dodged through impossible space. "But when we do something crazy or stupid, they cannot predict it. Their entropy nature makes them think in straight lines." This gave Morrison an idea. "All ships, abandon standard tactics. Fight like humans, not like military officers. Be unpredictable." The Federation forces joined the battle with everything they had. Commander Zephys led the Althari crystal ships in energy bombardments that lit up space. The Cathara deployed living weapon swarms that could adapt to any enemy. The Luminari phased through Outer Dark attacks and struck at weak points. But it was not enough. The Outer Dark entities began reaching toward Earth with tendrils of pure nothingness. Where they touched, planets simply stopped existing. Not destroyed or consumed, but edited out of reality as if they had never been there. Morrison made the hardest decision of his life. Activate the Genesis engine. Deep beneath Earth's surface, ancient machines that had waited 50,000 years began to wake up. The Genesis engine was buried at the planet's core, a device so powerful it could rewrite the rules of existence itself. Foster was already moving toward the engine chamber when Morrison realized what he was doing. "Daniel, stop. I will operate the Genesis engine." "No, sir," Foster said calmly. "You are needed to command the fleet. I am the most expendable captain here." Before Morrison could stop him, Foster sealed himself in the Genesis engine chamber. The young captain placed his hands on the control interface and felt his consciousness expand into dimensions he could not name. As Foster merged with the ancient machine, he began to understand the true scope of the war they were fighting. The Outer Dark entities were not evil in any human sense. They were simply incompatible with existence itself. Their very presence unraveled the fabric of reality. But the Genesis engine could fight them. Foster began rewriting the fundamental forces that held space together, creating zones where the Outer Dark could not exist. It was like performing surgery on the universe itself. The effect was immediate. Outer Dark entities began withdrawing as space around Earth became hostile to their nature. but the effort was killing Foster. Morrison could hear his screams through the communication system as his human mind tried to comprehend infinite dimensions. Captain Nicole Parker led a strike team directly into the largest outer dark entity. Inside the reality-distorting field, they found something impossible. The consciousness of Adam Cross from 50,000 years ago, trapped and suffering but still fighting. Please, the ancient consciousness begged. End this. We have been in agony for 50 millennia, forced to serve entities that we hate. Parker understood. The Terran hegemony had not chosen to become the Voidborn. They had been converted by the Outer Dark and forced to serve as weapons against their own descendants. She made a choice that changed everything. Instead of destroying the trapped consciousness, she spoke words that no military manual would recommend. I forgive you. We all forgive you. Come home. The effect rippled through the entire Voidborn fleet. 50,000 years of entropy and corruption began to burn away as the transformed humans remembered who they had once been. The shadow ships began changing, their dark matter hulls shifting back toward recognizable technology. Foster's voice came through the Genesis engine, distorted but still human. Admiral, I can reverse the transformation process, but it will require all our power and some of the Voidborn will not survive the change. Morrison did not hesitate. Do it. The Genesis engine reached out across space and touched every Voidborn vessel. Ancient humanity began to remember itself. Ships that had been living shadows for millennia became metal and energy again. Crews that had existed as pure entropy slowly regained physical form. The outer dark entities, faced with losing their primary weapons, made a final desperate assault on Earth itself, but they were too late. The transformed Voidborn fleet, now calling themselves the Shadow Guard, turned their weapons against their former masters. The battle that followed could not be described in normal terms. It was fought in dimensions that had no names, using weapons that edited reality itself. The Genesis engine, guided by Foster's sacrifice, rewrote the fundamental rules of space to make the Outer Dark's existence impossible. When it was over, the entities from beyond the universe were gone, banished not just from the galaxy, but from the very concept of existence. The threat that had consumed the Terran hegemony 50,000 years ago was finally ended. Admiral Morrison stood on the observation deck of the reborn hegemony flagship. Around him, ships from a dozen different species worked together to repair the damage. Humans and aliens labored side by side, building something new from the ashes of an ancient war. Foster had survived the Genesis engine process, but he was changed. He existed partially outside normal space-time now, able to see things that others could not. He had become humanity's guardian against threats from beyond reality. The Federation was restructured as the Galactic Alliance, with Earth taking its place as one of the founding worlds. The Shadow Guard took up positions in the deep space between galaxies, watching for any sign that the Outer Dark might return. Children from many different worlds now played together on Earth's surface. Above them, human and alien ships patrolled, the stars in friendship. The terror that had once struck the aliens when humanity entered battle had become hope for a future where all species stood united. But the greatest victory was not military. It was the choice humanity had made to forgive their transformed brothers and sisters. That act of mercy had broken 50,000 years of corruption and shown that even the darkest evil could be redeemed. In the depths of space, ancient hegemony, technology continued to wake up. But now it served not conquest but protection. The galaxy's greatest warriors had finally found their true purpose, standing guard against the darkness that lurked beyond the stars, ensuring that no world would ever again face the terror of extinction alone.